who can benefit from drone as a service, from irrigation intelligence as a service, to a car manufacturer who has got 200 different raw material suppliers supplying into the 10 different factories producing goods. All of this can be connected through intelligence. Now, if this is the AI, this is the intelligence that we want to marry with connectivity, that is the next generation of change we want to do. And this can be done in every industry, in every mine, in every farm, in every auto manufacturer, and so on and so forth. And we telcos, with the connectivity that we have and the assets that we have, that is the immediate opportunity we should take on. And that is the help that we need from the ecosystem to capitalize. This industry needs monetization. There are big opportunities before us. The technology that the stakeholders have put together is humongous already. And now, but what is missing is we should come together. On one hand, we have a latent demand and money opportunity. On second hand, we need the money. On the third hand, if you see, we have all the capabilities to put together. We need to stitch together and monetize this opportunity ahead of us. India will continue to be very poor on physical infrastructure, but this connectivity and intelligent infrastructure can unleash the opportunities tomorrow. And that I think we should all come together and do. And therefore, that is the next imperative.
Great thoughts, Mr. Agrawal. And thank you very much for insights into Vodafone's journey here and what you have built over here. And it's going to impact for the next decade, right, across industries and across verticals. So, Mr. Pallav, what are your thoughts on Airtel's journey?
Yeah, so good morning, everybody. So from the last 2 to 3 years, almost, we are deploying, the virtualization networks, and that the entire platform of the IMS Volte, which has been, quite big, 125, 130 million subscribers already running on the Volte platform. A lot of EPC deployments, almost 13 to 14 TBPS, out of which, 4 to 5 TBPS is almost, virtualized, and rest is in the transformation phase. You can see the cloud phase is almost there, where we are talking about the deployments. The phase has been started, the drop has been there, where we should talk about more, how the automation can be massive part of this NFV area. And there we start, faster go to the markets, because it's not about, only building the cloud, because building of the cloud has been happening from past years. It's about, how we should basically build the kind of 3 phases which are very important today. The first phase, which I will talk about, let's start from the planning phase. So if I have to plan a network, if I have to plan a disaggregated kind of model, what kind of components I should basically aggregate? Because today when I am talking about the horizontal layer, this should consist of different components. So if I say that X fabric is there, my Y COTS hardware is there, then obviously different BIM vendor. So how should I basically, have my operations and planning teams basically into a kind of, quite easy for them, this planning tool. So if I say I have to order 100 gigs of site, okay, so let's start, how this 100 gigs of site, can be automated by, generating all the bill of quantities and all the low-level designs in automated manner. Because when I talk about the cloud deployments, it's just a stitch of the under cloud, SAP, and all those things. It's very important to understand how we can automate the entire design process and how we can automate these kind of complex BOQs which are coming from different vendors. And that's where all the inputs coming out from this automation tool should be feed into the cloud deployments. And that's what, the cloud deployment happens, that you just generate a JSON file which goes into the server. It automatically configs your servers. It automatically generates a kind of script which is running over, the SAP under cloud and over cloud deployments. And then we talk about how the different SDNs, let's take up an example. If you have to integrate basically Arista, or if you have to integrate Cisco or Nokia, then what kind of additional things you need to actually integrate as a plugin into your deployment script? Because you will not have those complexities today, daily, deal with, okay, today I am just integrating Nokia, tomorrow I am integrating Cisco, but how your automation script, which is deploying the cloud, adapts actually those lifecycle managements. And that's where it's very important to understand, how the deployment happens, close coordination with this planning and operations. Then the third phase, which I talk about, is very important, how you are going to have the UATs entirely automated. Because onboarding is one of the part, but UAT is a big pain today. So we have to see how the tools coming up like Spirent or X or Y, Z, they are able to capable us basically, and we should be able to automate the entire UATs of the NFV and also the VNF components there. Because if you do this UATs, you will be more faster, to time to the markets, almost a month towards to days or maybe seconds if you get expertise slowly into this area. And that's where these three components which we are adapting, that's a way towards to the digitalization we are adapting. We are trying to have lot of skill development where we have changed ourselves from just coordinating to co-build the solutions closely with our partners. And that's where I am saying when we see the orchestra. Sorry, somebody is yeah. So when we are talking about the orchestration, it's not about just the orchestration. It about the orchestration of the clouds. It about creating the automation engine into the picture. And what kind of automations I am bringing actually in this orchestration. Yeah. And actually, that's the future of the virtualization. If you talk about, and I think Bharti is doing a job. A lot of things getting into automated phase from the cloud deployments. You can see a lot of changes which are happening. From vertical cloud deployments to horizontal cloud deployment. Engaging multiple vendor technologies. Training people. Into that processes, co-building the solutions, and you see the latest example of VRAN, which we have done. In India, and I think it's the first one deployment which has been done. I think you can see how the components from a disaggregated layer has been done, successfully to launch the VRAN and Open RAN architecture. Thanks, Nel. I think over to you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, great insights, Pallav. I think as we heard about from Mr. Mudit about cloudification and from you about automation, how it is more important on top of the basic cloudification foundation, right, of microservices architecture and stuff. I think that is absolutely right, because if you look at operators are suffering from lower ARPU, but the costs are increasing, right? And more you automate the network, the OPEX goes down, and that helps you guys scale even further and add more services on top of it, right? In a very faster time to market. And Mr. Modi also talked about importance of ecosystem and working together. So let me jump to Mr. Srinivas, and if Mr. Srinivas can share his thoughts on how Nokia is helping operators like Vodafone, Airtel, and everyone to embark on this journey.
Sure. Thanks, Neil. What I'll do with your permission is I'll try to maybe set my comments in a larger context, and then we'll get into a little bit more into what Nokia is doing and what are our plans. But if you look at, if we look at the larger context of 5G, 5G, as a technology that, as we are all aware, it's more than just increased bandwidth, increased speeds, and it is going to create entirely new business models. It's going to create an entirely new way of connecting people and things. Okay, so I believe when we look at 5G and when we look at preparing ourselves for 5G, this is whether we are a equipment vendor like ourselves, like Nokia, or we are a service provider like Vodafone and Vodafone India and Airtel. I think we have to look fundamentally at what are the business models that that new business models that we are going to derive, that we're going to go to market with. That's number one. And then number two, we have to look at what is the network architecture that we're going to need that is going to support a very agile, a very supple kind of a setup, such that today there is one business opportunity. Tomorrow, let's say if there's a gaming convention, there's a set of cloud gamers, and they're sitting in Gurgaon. How do we quickly deliver high bandwidth, low latency services to that convention? And then tomorrow there could be another event that we haven't even thought about or heard of right now. But the network kind of is sophisticated enough that to borrow from what Mudit said and Pallav also said, is that we're able to divert, the network's flexible, that we're able to divert resources, we're able to re-architect the network in real time, in an automated way, such that the resources are available where the need is. Now, the additional complication with 5G is that right now, I think the consumer business model is understood. And the consumer business model is simple. Today, we get maybe 10 Mbps on our phones on 4G, 10, 15 Mbps. Tomorrow, maybe we'll get 50 to 100 Mbps with 5G. Okay, but the fundamental business model doesn't change. It's going to be what is the bandwidth and how much capacity are you consuming, and probably the tariff plans are going to be linked to that. But with 5G, we are looking at connecting billions of devices to each other. We are looking at reaching out to enterprises with more than just VPN services, layer 2, layer 3 VPN services, right? And so it's going to entail that we as an industry reinvent ourselves. Okay.
Yeah.
So when we look at now re-architecting the network, I think we've got to look at it in a very fundamental way. And I believe, the one of the largest problems that we have as an industry, and I've been in this industry longer than I would care to admit, is a cultural issue, is a cultural mindset. Okay.
Yeah.
We're in industry. I remember many years ago when I used to work in the US, I worked for AT&T for a brief while, and the rule of thumb over there was anytime the capacity on a link exceeded 50%, you started planning to configure an additional link over there, and that process typically took 6 months. Okay.
Wow.
Fast forward to today, when we can't afford 6 months for anything. A new business model will come up. We've got to configure ourselves. We've got to be ready to address that opportunity in a matter of weeks, if not days. There could be events that occur, events like the pandemic right now. There could be another, catastrophic, disastrous event for which we need to divert network resources to that affected area or the affected areas. And all of this needs to happen in a matter of minutes and hours in real time. Okay. And the networks that we've so far have been very successful, hugely resilient networks, as we are seeing. Thanks to COVID, all of us are working from home, and I think all of us are experiencing, very little disruption to our work lives, and that is all thanks to the people in the industry who have built networks that is able to, handle events like this even on a massive global scale. Right? But going forward, I think the fundamental architecture of the network will have to change, such that it becomes a lot more dynamic, it becomes a lot more automatable, and the network doesn't rely on humans for a lot of the day-to-day actions. There should be a lot of reconfiguring of the network resources that is driven by, an analytics-driven model where, there's a lot of telemetry information that is coming north from the network elements themselves. And then we have an analytics engine that anticipates faults, that anticipates where the bottlenecks are going to be, and starts diverting the appropriate resources. The resources could be core resources, like a packet core or an LTE or whatever the voice core over there to those affected areas. It could be reconfiguring the underlying transport architecture. That could mean at the IP layer, at the optics layer. It could be reconfiguring the radio resources at the sites. And a lot of this stuff now needs to happen in an entirely automated way. And my contention right now is that as an industry, okay, we are learning, and we have to learn this really fast. Now, companies that didn't even exist 20 years ago, 25 years ago, like Amazon, they came in and they had nothing, they had no legacy. So they could build this cloud because it was required, to sustain the core of their business. And they have redefined what it means. Companies like Amazon and Google have redefined what it means to make computing available widely, to make computing available in a really dynamic way. And we are taking, we are learning lessons from the web scalers in terms of how to make this, how to create an automated infrastructure, not just for compute and storage, but also for the network. And I think that is going to be one of the big challenges that we have as an industry. There's obviously the technical element, and there is obviously the fact that we're all moving towards a disaggregated architecture. No longer is a monolithic software code, the way to go. But everything is going to be broken down. Everything is going to be disaggregated. We are getting used to a reality in which no operator is going to buy everything, the entire stack from one vendor. They're going to buy best in breed from different vendors. And then they're going to invest the time in integrating all of this. There's a lot of standards activity to create open interfaces to make that process more efficient, to make it more viable, right? So all of this is happening. But again, at one level, again, I'll just take a brief digression. At a computer science level, I think a lot of these problems are understood. When I was in college, and I was learning the C language, I wrote some sorting algorithms, bubble sort. And I would give it, 10,000, 20,000 randomly generated numbers and ask it to sort it. And I'd be really happy to find that the result would come back in a few seconds, right? But then once we got into multi-core, multi-threaded systems, then if you ran my algorithm on that and let's say give it 10 million numbers, it would take forever because we're only using one core or one thread in that code. Now, computer science has solved that problem by multi-threaded algorithms, right? Yeah. So the fundamental problem of disaggregating, of splitting something, right, and then aggregating the results again, that problem has been solved in computer science. That's a solved problem. Okay. Yeah. In our industry, what we're doing is now we have to take some of those insights, some of those learnings from that arena, and say now, okay, if we have to now deal with a disaggregated network, and then we have to start automating things, and we have to start orchestrating things such that they happen in the order of minutes or seconds. Right. It's going to take a lot of effort for us to build that kind of a number one, to build the intelligence in terms of analytics, and then translating that analytics, the business intent, into actual network configuration, right? And that's going to require a very sophisticated orchestration layer. And that orchestration layer has got to orchestrate across network layers, whether it is radio or optical or IP or the core resources. It's got to orchestrate across those, right? And it's got to orchestrate across, different vendors. So and that is a large problem, and that is a problem. So I think we have to, I think we have to do a lot of work in understanding that, we still don't, there is a lot of unknowns. We still don't know what are all the business models that are going to hit us in 5G. So we have to build a foundation. We have to build a framework such that that framework can then serve us no matter what the business model that hits us. And I think that is going to be the big challenge. And at Nokia, there is a tremendous amount of investment right now in building exactly that kind of a foundational layer, right? Whether it is taking elements like the packet core and containerizing them and disaggregating them, or making our transport networks very automatable, making our transport networks much more receptive to analytics. There's a lot of telemetry that's going in, to making all of those programmable, to creating SDN, to creating an SDN framework that makes the automation of all of this, more efficient. So there's a tremendous amount of work that is going on. But I would contend over here, and I'd love to hear from the industry stalwarts who are building networks like Mr. Paliwal, Mr. Agarwal, as to how they would how they view this challenge and how they think is the most efficient way for us to address this challenge.
Great.
So back to you, Neil.
Yep. Great thoughts, Mahesh. I think you have hit the nail on the head. Like, we are embarking on all these different disaggregation, but again, how to put it together, taking a leaf from IT world, right, and hyperscalers, and how to put it together is going to be a challenge, and how do we scale it is going to be another challenge. So, talking about scale, Mr. Pathak, can you share your views on what Xcelient's role is in the ecosystem?
Yeah, hi. Hello, everyone. So, from an Nexgen point of view, we've been a leader in the performance analytics in the market, primarily working with major telcos and in India with all the service providers, primarily looking at providing the network application performance monitoring from the aggregation to the mobile, till the UE. Just before, I think, going on to the product, my thought process primarily from SDN and the perspective is today, like, the networks are with a 4G to a 5G kind of evolution is happening now. There's a lot of augmentation which is going to happen in the network, and we really heard the great thoughts from Mudit and Mr. Paliwal. There would be a lot of augmentation right from an access to the core because of the traffic. There will be a tsunami of data traffic which is going to happen with the applications which are going to come up, and that is one of the kind of a real challenge as well. But at the same time, the Indian operators are doing great. We have seen it during our pandemic time that how we all are connected to each other gives a later strength of what telecom operators in India has able to cater to us and across the globe itself. From an SDN perspective and an NFV perspective, what I have seen is that there are a lot of cloudification and the virtualization has happened. And at the same time, there is an open architecture which is kind of really helped on from the points where operators have think to put it earlier in the millions in the hardware helps, and then primarily going out, write them off or wait for the depreciation to be at the level where they can be swapped. But now within a VNF and the SDN kind of thing is coming up, it's really heading correctly, and the great adoption is happening from a perspective of the networks, the virtualization, whether it's a 5G or whether it's a different core in the network, it's IP core or it's optics core. All the application level stuff happening out today. If there is with the government spectrum reusability, where you can have a 4G to a 3G, a 3G to 4G. I think that is really helped out with many of the users could be in one of the network to another network. All those applications on the SDN has really helped out, and application kind of layer on each of the function could be IP, could be RAN, could be a optical network in any of the provider. and specifically in India, really helped out. Could be from an auto provisioning, could be from the network provisioning, could be from a defined route. Everything is going out more of an automation perspective, which is layer working on the top of it, and or it could be a software defined network, or it could be a software defined wide area network. The automation and the control plane, the segregation of the control plane from the forwarding plane has really helped out. So I see a lot of adoption coming out in the future, because the first set of SDN NFV was a struggle, but then the adoption started pretty well. I think from SDN NFV has come from the center stage, right from the backstage, and that is a shift because of the pace at which the technology is progressing and getting outdated. So coming to Xerion. We offer network performance monitoring for primarily for telcos and their enterprise networks. We basically have it already on the SDN architecture with extension of NFVs to the different network infrastructure. Could be a router, or could be a product, could be any till to the E node B. And we are currently also working on the foundation concept of 5G to make it possible to deliver any type of a telecom services anywhere, and the virtualization is kind of make that possibility by enabling the instantiation of the services and application using the service running on the pods or the compute power. So whether it's a network slicing, or whether it's monitoring, which we give the bird's eye, eagle's eye view of what's really happening on the network from each layer, and then primarily, giving on our orchestration, it gives out to the analytical layer, which is on the cloud. So we are already serving out from a cloudification and the virtualization perspective. Now with the 5G kind of coming, we are already a 5G ready, and we are able to give the application related, which could be on a mobile edge on the NIC, primarily to give any application performance monitoring for their enterprise, or it's a deep packet inspection monitoring for their customers, and in the virtualized environment, or even having a client or agent on the UE. So that really helps out to give the end-to-end visibility to our customers, specifically for the telcos.
Correct. I think that's I think great solution, I believe, because if you don't have analytics and understand where the QoS is, how the QoS is across the layers, right? It's going to be very difficult for operator to tune the service or even change the business model, right? Different business model achieving 5 nines or 6 nines in a sense, correct?
Absolutely.
Yep. I think that's a great extra layer of analytics, which is going to help operators drive this journey forward. Talking about how operators can do that smoothly, can I go to Dr. Kocher and take his thoughts quickly on where do you see COI's role as we see in many countries, 5G has become a national agenda, right? 5G, building a 5G network. It's seen as one of a key arsenal for tech Cold War in many big economies. So do you see our government with Digital India initiatives? Is there a way where 5G is going to gain that much importance? And how all these building blocks which operators are building, right, are going to help India achieve that level of expertise or competence to compete with likes of China or maybe US in a sense? And what is COI's role in helping achieve that, if that is true? You're on mute, sir.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
So the answer to that is very clear. Yes. The operators, the industry, as well as the government is keen to roll out 5G, but we must see as to why they are wanting to do it. And this is universally true. The factors which play out to give solutions, which have been articulated very well by the previous speakers, are only three. in the environment. First factor is time, second is space, and third is cost. So as years progress and as the user wants better class of service, better affordability, and in-time services, so do the imperatives emerge technically. Now, there has always been a race to reduce time in whatever you are wanting to do, and there has always been a race to increase space, which means your reach. And this has become more important now with newer applications coming to the fore, which have been very clearly articulated by Srinivas. He has very clearly said that the data that is going to flow on networks is going to be massive, never imagined. We don't know what is going to come about it. And the third factor is cost. And this cost is both external and internal. I will talk about both separately. All this is then put into a bucket which is enabled by regulations and rules. So this is the environment in which we have been working for decades, and this is how various generations have been emerging. We see the current topic that we're talking about today only as an enabler. As and when the consumers demand more, be it machine to machine, be it human to human or human to machine, as and when they demand more applications will come in, new terminologies will come in. So it will always be a race of reducing time to take services to the consumer of the requisite level and to increase your reach at a lower cost. Now, in India, the permutations and combination of these three are going to be immense. And the use cases which are going to prevail in urban areas are not going to be the use cases which are going to be in the rural areas. And therefore, there will be a huge amount of constraint on how you can reach out to the consumer in a time frame which is acceptable, and that is where SDN and NFV come into play. As far as why this is becoming important is because telecom has been now seen as is now being seen increasingly as a catalyst, as a foundation, if I may say so. So it is catalyzing all other industries, which is further complicating things, because the use cases of telecom are getting interspersed with the use cases of the industries that ride on telecom or drive strength from telecom. And both of them give so many options, so many permutations and combinations, that every day the operators and the providers will be faced with challenges they never thought would ever come.
Yeah.
And those are the things that have to be factored in. Now, what the government is seized of, they are seized of this emerging situation. They are also seized of the fact that they want the citizens to get the best experience that they can get at the lowest cost. And to provide that, they have launched a number of initiatives which you are all aware of, like National Broadband Mission, etc., etc. 5G is also one of the means by which they are wanting to reach to the consumers. From the industry side, we are asking them to look at telecom in a different manner. We are saying that with the parameters that I just outlined, telecom should be seen as an essential service, like water and electricity. And therefore, the levies and the rules and regulations which are built around telecom should not be for a vertical. It should be for a horizontal, for a foundational sector. They are increasingly started looking at it in that manner. They have also got to enable it within the regulatory frameworks. They have to also see that the spectrums that are required by the industry to roll out what is desired by the user, what is desired by the government to go to the user, is actually happening. And I'm glad to say that positive steps have emerged from the government. They have constituted a group of secretaries to see that spectrum gets freed up by other ministries, by other users, and it gets harmonized so that our operators get that type of spectrum which they desire for 5G. So the government is very clear that they want this to happen. Okay, and they also want to see that this happens at the global level. So standards become very important. Okay, we have aspirations of making Indian standards which are globally acceptable. We are progressing in that direction. So to say that are we progressing at the right speed? Speed takes time to gather, and we are gathering that speed, and maybe we will outrace many others in this speed. So Neil, yes, industry, government, user, all of them are together in this, and we will see this happen.
Great to hear. Great thoughts, Dr. Kocher, as always. Going back to Mr. Garcia, great paintings, by the way, in your backdrop. I don't know if you painted it, but it's great paintings. You're on mute, by the way. Yeah. So, Dr. Kocher rightly put up a framework on to look at this. So, not a problem, but approach, right? Space, time, and cost. And you talked about in your presentation about space and cost and even time, right? With your solution, how it accelerates across all the three, saving space, saving time, and cost as well. So, can you talk about in your discussions with a different player in the ecosystem, because you sit in the almost start of the value chain, giving components which goes into infrastructure, which goes to operators, and then there are services built on top of it, right? So in your view, in your discussions over the last couple of years with different players, stakeholders, what do you see? How is the progress across, maybe let's India, for example, for this matter? How do you see everything's progressing? We heard from operators, we heard from Nokia. What is your view on this?
So, first of all, I have to admit that all what has been said by the different speakers is very eye-opening in the sense that very often SDN NFV was discussed at the software level. And in fact, we can realize that the virtualization, and so which is the base of the SDN and NFV, is happening at all the layers. Mr. Srinivas was talking about the optical, even the IP. I talk about the radio access networks. Several other speakers talk about application layer, which is virtualized. So the virtualization is something which is happening. And with the 5G, in fact, this is the base of the 5G. You need the disaggregation has created the needs of the virtualization. So to come back to your question about India. So I'm seeing in India probably the best mind coming together. I have to admit that in other parts of the world, political competition, let me call it this way, are creating sometimes people to not work all together. Yeah. Where in India, even if each operator has its own P&L and need to have its end users, at the end, when you're adding the government, the different network players, the operators like we have today on the panel, they are really trying to solve the problem for the end user first. And that will then be solved for themselves. And I think it's important. And what we are seeing in India is, in fact, and as a component vendor, we are having more and more discussion with operators directly. Because the operators want to understand what is under the hood, let me use this expression, and how can I better leverage the technology coming to answer the problematic and my problematic, that in the user of India problematic, which is cost, deployment at the right time in the right place, the right bandwidth, but that's just one of the aspect of the equation. And how can I do that by using virtualization that will save CapEx and OpEx so that the operators has the right investment capable on the the operator to the end user. So I'm very excited by what we are seeing in India. That's, by the way, I'm a worldwide.
Anjali, can you mute yourself, please?
So even if I'm based in France, when I was, before the COVID, I was traveling quite often to India. And because it's very important for us, and we are having more and more discussion with the operators, with the standards organization, like IITC in India as well, the 5G test bed. So in India, we are seeing a spirit of the 5G where operators, vendors, international vendors are really looking at from the end user perspective and the characteristic of India, which is you have big urban cities, you have difficulties sometimes to deploy that in the rural aspect, and I really think the 5G as the vehicle to deploy a massive network in India and really change the way of the people life by providing them services, way of connecting, and people were talking about the connectivity. That's really the two aspects is how do you deliver connectivity so that the people life can change with new services and new applications. And we, Xilinx, we are really here to discuss with operators, with local vendors, with international vendors, in order to bring our technology and the value chain we can bring to deliver those services on top of the hardware that we are delivering.
Makes sense. Very good, very good. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Great thoughts. So let's move forward and just talk about if anyone can jump in for this question. So we are also seeing in this journey a lot of disaggregation, and from disaggregation we are seeing virtualization, cloudification, microservice architecture. But how, as an operator, as a vendor, how do you convince in terms of ROI? Because it's still under development. What business case do you offer if you are an infrastructure vendor to an operator, and if you are an operator to convince your CFO to go on this journey? As many of on the panel said, it's a mindset thing, right? To go into a digital transformation mindset is the biggest first step and first challenge. So maybe Mudrit or Pallav or Mahesh, if you can jump in and say what is the ROI for the operators to. I know there is theoretically on paper we see, we have to go to virtualization. It's very flexible. It's going to give us faster time to market. But do we have any examples which can prove that there is a good ROI to this?
So I think I'll let Mudit and Pallav maybe go first because they've got the direct perspective of being there, and then maybe I'll see if I can provide another perspective.
Sure. Pallav, you want to get it started?
Yeah, mute, Pallav.
Oh, sorry. No, I think Mudit, you can continue. Yeah, then I will add it up. Yeah, please.
Sure. So I think Neil, your question is what is the ROI? What is the business case for going ahead with the virtualization and the new 5G use cases which are being talked about? Right, that is the question. Correct. So see, so there are two parts to the equation. What is the business case, and in what time frame can it be achieved? Let me put it in these two parts. Right. So business case, of course, is humongous. The challenge is how much and what effort it will take, and in what time frame can it be done. So I think there is an immense amount of value that the technology can produce, right? And let me just put a case, and then I will tell the challenges associated and the time frame associated with it, just by using an example. So we all know that agricultural production and the entire supply chain, to take the agricultural production from a farm to a godown to a village mandi, 40%, 50% produce gets wasted on the roads because of lack of information on the right roads, right warehouse, availability of the transportation infrastructure, etc., etc. We also understand that agricultural production varies quite a lot because of lack of intelligence on fertilizers, weather, etc., etc. Now let me take a completely different dimensions, two or three other dimensions. India today is the world's possibly the largest demography, and we will be the largest workforce in a couple of years. More than 700 million people, young people in production, in working age group. So we are the largest demography. And you look at our productivity, per capita income, that is amongst the lowest in the world. And why is it? And what will it take to step it up? And what is the impact of it? So the impact of it is trillions of dollars, and that is well quoted by Government of India, Ministries of India, and that is pretty well understood. So the value is humongous and understood. And that why is that value bottleneck today? Because lot of these young people do not have access to tools, do not have access to marketplace, do not have us. So why is the productivity of Flipkart so good, and why is the productivity of millions of these small enterprises not so good? We all know that all of these hyperscalers, OTT guys who have built platforms have monetized them quite well and improved their productivity quite well. And not having access to that digital infrastructure is the key reason why the demographic dividend is seriously compromised. And the value of it is trillions of dollars and is quite well understood. Now, this translates to the business cases of the participating enterprises, and therefore there is enough money to be captured. Now that is one part of the equation, and then we can go down to individual corporations. Say I can then go into telcos, and what is the business case for telcos? They can reduce the cost of making a bit. If a lot of things can be done by participating ecosystem providers, they can monetize their customer base by giving them more value-added services if we can bring the ecosystem to bear. And we know the business case. We know the business cases around smart meters. We know about the blood pressure meters, about the health records, etc., etc. So all of those business cases do exist. The problem is, the challenge is, in what time frame can we make them happen, and how to put the investment to get them started off the ground.
Correct.
And we know the challenges also. We know the challenges on the cost of the spectrum. We know the challenges associated with fiberization and low fiberization at the moment. We understand the challenges around the site access and getting the site access at the right relevant things. So we understand the infrastructure challenges quite well, and therefore I will not go in those direction. And those are some of the challenges which are inhibiting the industry. One. Second, as Maheshji very rightly said, it is about mindset. This industry still works on a very telco mindset, which is great, giving carrier-grade reliable services on one hand, but it's quite slow on another hand. The agility that we can learn from hyperscalers can benefit and unleash a lot of things that we do. So that is the part two of the equation. So if I were to put the pins together, business case exists in reducing the cost, in reducing the time, in reducing the errors, in reducing the deployment that we do today. And that is what Palab said. Automation and orchestration will make that happen. And increasing the intensity of automation in everything that we do, whether it is deployment of core locations, whether it is building of the transmission networks, whether it is building of the radio sites, whatever we do, whatever we automate, number one, whatever we open source, number two, and whatever we simplify and templatize will create a humongous cost advantage on an ongoing basis. And that is one. And that is what should be accelerated. Second, monetization of new cases which are near adjacencies and can be quickly monetized, and driving the entire ecosystem and the entire policy framework around it would be number two. Number three, then what we should do is also look at a couple of other things, which is, how do we as a telco transform not only the network part of the domain, but how do we transform the customer interaction, the channel interaction, the brand interaction, the sales to the customer? And how do we then work? How do we take the capabilities that we develop in terms of blockchain, in terms of authentication, how do we take them to adjacent sectors and create monetization around it? And how will this then therefore create the digitalization of some of the important sectors? And how can we participate in that? So those are some of the things. So there are a large number of things to make the business cases viable, and clear imperatives are also well understood. Summarizing, the business cases are difficult to be created in the short time frame if we look at it. But if we look at a broader horizon and if we come together, then they can be made viable, and policy framework to sweeten the burn in the immediate case could be a solution. I know it's a long answer, Neil, but see if it helps you.
Very well put, Mudit. I think in our also discussions with different operators who are at different journeys in emerging markets versus developed markets, talking to AT&Ts of the world or talking to True in Thailand, for example. So everyone has different challenges and different mindset. As you said rightly, there's a big mindset shift needed when you talk about monetization from the existing mobile phone base consumers versus enterprises, and because that is more fragmented, right? And there are many business cases which are really viable, but it's not millions or hundreds of millions of and you have to work more to get every solution deployed and get ROI out of that. So that is a mindset change needed, because, as you said, it's a long game. It's not a short game, and that mindset should be there for getting revenues and I would say benefits out of the overall infrastructure which you guys are building, right, over the next few years, and not just in short term. So, Pallav, can you extend upon that?
Yeah, sure. Very well said, Mudit. I think you covered almost the part. I would just try to give an example there that if we talk about the return of investment and mostly about the capex, talking about the multi applications sitting today. If we talk about VRAN, if we talk about EPC, if we talk about core, and obviously a lot of load which is coming out from the applications from B2B and B2C side. So it's much of the requirements, is much of the need of the hour that whatever the NFV platform you are creating, that platform should be having the multi-tenancy kind of approach. Because if I say that today I want to go on edge, I want to have the open RAN strategy, I want to have EPC running there, maybe I want to have some cloud gaming examples there. So I should not give different breakouts. I should have one specific cloud. But then again, the challenge comes that if I create a specific cloud, how many locations, if you see the size of India, if I started creating the clouds into different locations, and when CU and DU goes more near to the edge and far edge, how many clouds you can build? So what is the optimization basically you can do? And there it comes a very important role of the NFV, that you should bring basically the techniques of distributed computing and other things, and try to build these and minimize the optimization of the clouds there, because the cloud should be built in such a way that your control plane should be specific, and then user plane already goes into the different locations. But distributed computing gives you that flexibility to minimize those number of clouds, and I think we have started doing that. You can see in the VRAN specifically, where the DU and CU multiplications will be there. We are trying to have this mixed combinations where EPC, RAN, then obviously gaming or any other business case, or any other use case which is coming, that can be shared across the model. This is one of the arena which we should take care. Then obviously, as Mudit explained, there are use cases. You can see the perishable items, especially in the food industry, needs to be tracked very well, because in India, still, if we say the cold chain infrastructure and other things are not very, advanced stage. So if we have to basically cater those industry, the tracking system, the network has to be super strong, basically, to give these needs. And there you need to start building those edge locations, because if you see about the signaling, railways, and all those things, your clouds, should be able to run along with these speeds actually. Yeah. Thank you.
Correct. We haven't seen the big IoT wave yet.
I think Pulak has made a very, very important point, right? And what we can do together is, as an ecosystem, drive policy framework around it. Say, for example, as Pulak said, like take this cold chain, and government could mandate that telcos will have to take these cold chain initiatives which lead to productivity improvement for our agricultural community, right? And it should be mandated, and government should also not only mandate but also enable and support them, right? And I mean, all the 3-4 telcos could be given a region or could be given a set of states, and what they should do is help improve the trackability of agricultural and milk production and help the small medium enterprises, right? These initiatives could be mandated, could be driven with a focus and an enablement, and that will lead to the larger good, is what could be a possibility.
Yeah.
Correct. Anyone has thoughts on this, Mr. Srinivas or Dr. Koch?
I will chime in. I mean, it's tremendous listening to insights from our colleagues in the CSP world, because they live this challenge every day. They live this challenge. They live this truth every single day. I'll try to provide a slightly, maybe even a tangential perspective in a little bit. But I think fundamentally, I don't think there is a choice. It's an imperative, and like we discussed earlier, 5G is a completely different animal. It's not just a bigger, fatter pipe. It is going to lead to the creation of business models. It's going to lead to the creation of a lot of B2B kind of business models, that the CSPs will have to deal with, that maybe they don't have to deal with as much. So today, the B2B service model is primarily SD-WAN, or it's a connectivity via VPNs. Tomorrow, it's going to be a lot more sophisticated. And with that, the demands on the network, again, are going to get a lot more challenging. There'll be a lot of latency-sensitive applications. There'll be a lot of mission-critical applications that rely on sub 10 milliseconds, sub 20 millisecond kind of latencies. So the role that the network is going to play in enabling the industry as a whole is just it's going to be absolutely central to it. And the big challenge, in my view, is that we are still in the stage in which we know a lot of what we don't know, but there's also a lot of unknowns that we don't know yet. So the challenge for us is, how do we create an architecture? How do we create a framework that can scale and that can be flexible enough to handle all of that? And the tangential perspective that I'll provide is as follows. If we take Amazon as a company, phenomenally well-run company, it's absolutely one of the best-run companies in the world. The annual revenues to the tune of about $260 billion, right? And if you look at their earnings, it's in the region of about $11 billion. So 4% is their earnings, right? Now, what Amazon did was they built these huge data centers. They built this huge capability to be able to handle workloads during Black Friday, during Christmas, and the rest of the year. Obviously, all of those computes were sitting, very low utilization, and that was the genesis of AWS. So if we look at AWS as a business today, AWS as a business is about 35 billion, but it's a far more profitable business for Amazon than the retail business that Amazon is in. Okay, and that is the result of Amazon building an architecture, right, that served their main need, but then the architecture had so much strength that they could now lease that architecture out to other companies that use it. And now AWS is the cash cow for Amazon rather than the retail business. Retail is what has the eyeballs, retail is what has the brand. But if you look at the real earnings, the real high value business that Amazon has, it comes from AWS, right? And so my submission here, is that it is, we have to figure out the business model, but it's an imperative. I believe if we don't go down this path, we're going to become irrelevant, whether this is as a CSP or as an equipment vendor. We don't risk. We're almost certain to go down the path of irrelevance. So moving into this kind of an automated, analysis-driven, disaggregated architecture is the industry imperative today.
Correct. That would make sense. So, Mr. Pathak, how do you approach different operators with your product and make case for ROI in terms of analytics? You said what benefits it provide, obviously, but how do you see operators adopting your solution and for SDN NFV in perspective?
So in India today, we are with the major Indian telcos. We are catering to all the telcos, and with the 5G applications coming out, which is like a very bandwidth sensitive. We provide the granularity in the microseconds, as very well said by Mudit and Pallav about the applications which is going out in with the 5G evolving. Our product really not only works out currently today with providing the services till the E-Node Bs with the different layers, but at the same time now with the evolution of the 5G coming up, there are a lot of applications which will be running out on the mobile edge compute. So while we are kind of doing the transport monitoring, active monitoring on from the aggregation till the E-Node Bs, and now with the G-Node Bs coming up, similarly, now we could have our, the passive deep packet inspection, which could sit out on the NIC and, look out all the applications which are like in an HTTPS, like a DNS, or it could be any layer 4 to layer 7 or any kind of a retransmission which happens from any location, which is, so, and at the same time, we can correlate it on the orchestration and put it on the analytic layer, which is running on the cloud. So that gives really the visibility for any operator to look at it, that where the leap of issues are really coming out, and how can we really work on that. Apart from that, I think the AI and the machine learning really works out from the perspective of predicting, like it could be a issue which we could foresee many times and look out at the corrective action. Now coming with the software defined wide area network, which is like kind of picking up a lot of enterprise customers are moving on SD-WANs, and so while they have the control function with them, with all the templates which we define in the network, there are many times they also face with the retuning it. could be with the network, and also how we offer a solution with providing a application deep packet inspection at their premises, or it could be a branch offices, and figuring it out whether it is an issue of a server or any kind of a client related issues, or it could be any. So it is kind of a complete congregation of both the active scenario and the passive scenarios of the network. And we have many customers across the world, major telcos, like which we are doing in capturing this process with the 5G. We have very strong use case with going with the MEC to the application layer, both on the MEC and as well as on an enterprise customers. It really helps a lot to give the complete gamut of and the end user response time, where the use cases are very mission critical. And as Budit also mentioned, and Pallav, it was great hearing. Many application use cases could be like the dockyards, where have mostly sometimes the precision is required, and any kind of an error it could cause to any casualty. Or it in the healthcare, there are a lot of products which has already been found out. So it really helps out that in the precision in the time, which is very time sensitive, which requires a precision, which requires an accuracy. It really helps out that go and manage from an end-to-end perspective. So I think it is a great move going out with the adoption of SDN NFV in the future. With the telcos already moving into that, and work from the OEMs, where we have got a strong bare metal pitching up the VNF network functions, and then it saves the cost and the TCOs for the operators as well. And then on the same time, you can orchestrate and run those applications on the need basis. So I see by 2023-24, lot of new applications, and it with the new evolution, definitely a support comes out from the government to our operator as well.
Super. So we have just 4 minutes left into our discussion, which has been very interesting, and we are just warmed up actually. And I'm very sad to see you go in next 4 minutes. But before that, I can do a quick rapid fire with all of.
I want to make a very quick one small point on the ROI. On ROI, we should look at it as a two-factor problem. There are a lot of things which are very quick wins, which will really catapult us to the next league, as Pallav was rightly saying, and which actually do not require much investment. A lot of investment already exists, and they will take the country and the telcos and the entire industry to the next step. And then second, there are investments which will pay good dividends, but over a longer term. So, for example, what is it that takes money? So, if you put money in a spectrum and fiber, that is what requires humongous investment, and they can only be repaid over the long run. And a different thinking is needed to make sense out of that money or that investment. But then, if you take these two things aside, take aside spectrum, take aside fiber, then huge amount of spectrum already exists, huge amount of sites and fiber already exist, and huge amount of this capability can give AI to large number of small, medium and rural enterprise, and a huge economic upliftment of the country and citizen at large can be done. And that is where a huge focused effort from the policymakers and the industry participants should be done. And that's a big quick win which will yield good dividends and take the ecosystem to the next level, where further investments could be fructified. So that's the ROIC case, Neil.
Very well put. Thanks for rounding this up. Okay, then we have 2 minutes left now. Then I'll go for a rapid fire. I'll start with Mr. Garcia, and then Dr. Kochar, and then you guys can jump in as well, turn by turn. So, Mr. Garcia, can you tell us one top use case which will be enabled by SDN NFV? Just one, which you feel is the most important. Maybe in India context or global context. Anything is fine.
So I think healthcare, all the remote surgery, remote consultations. I think that with the 5G, those are very time sensitive, and that will change the way the life of a lot of the people that do not have access locally to healthcare. And I think that the agricultural aspect is probably the number 2 especially in India, and I'm putting that in the context of India, and I think that this will change the life of the people, and the 5G disaggregation is clearly one of these aspects that will bring those services and those applications real to the end users.
So remote healthcare from Mr. Garcia. Dr. Kocher, what do you say?
So I would say, Neil, that all this is futuristic. At this point of time, we don't have any use case in hand. And that is the point that we are making to the government, that if you want the economy to grow, and if you want the networks to roll out, you have to see that they get enabled financially. And you have to give us a canopy of rules and regulations which enable these rollouts at an economically acceptable price. Going forward, you can start looking at taxation after the use cases come in. But that at this point of time, what we are using are two terminologies. One is primary revenue and second is secondary revenue. We are saying that you don't bother about the primary revenue you can get out of telecom as you were doing earlier. You bother about the secondary revenue which will come from other industries which will get enabled by telecom. And that will be much more. And at this point of time, reduce the levies, reduce your stranglehold, and please enable a level playing field and use the same rules and regulations for all players providing the same services.
Makes sense. Mr. Mahesh, what is your favorite use case you feel would be enabled with SDN NFV?
I'll probably say
Top use case.
I'd probably say, one of the things that it's a hugely growing industry is online gaming, cloud gaming. I think that will be enabled with the 5G.
Got it. Mr. Pathak?
Yeah, I think I look out from one is definitely the digital healthcare, specifically, with the current in India, the robotics operations have already been started out. So it is not going to take a much longer. Definitely, as Mr. Kocher was absolutely right. It will take some time. It is a futuristic. Another is definitely the digital transformation across, various as I mentioned, the farmers market or the dockyards. I look at those as a use case scenario. Definitely, automotive cars are not going to come in India.
Automated bullocks. Automated bullocks. Mr. Mudit?
So very well said, all the people. I think few things which are taking off: industrial IoT to some extent, face recognition, digital marketplace a little bit out, but APIs are opening up. So these kind of things will start. Right, anything which has to do with video at edge and artificial intelligence at edge in a small shape and form is taking off.
Awesome. Mr. Pallav?
So I will again say the IoT use cases, especially if you see the connected devices are increasing, network infrastructure has to be accommodated. Soon you will see the big data explosions, being coming out, and you have to manage basically the simplicity in the networks. The first challenge, which you will face is the configuration changes are happening actually so dynamically. So how you will manage into IoT, that is being to be delivered, from the NFV space. Yeah.
Got it. So IoT, healthcare, robotic bullocks. No, sorry, not robotic bullocks, but robots in healthcare, and as Mudit said, digital marketplace and IoT. And I think Mr. Mahesh, what was your favorite? You said
can you convert robotic bullocks into scanning all the rural production, right? So tracking the rural production, right? That's what it means possibly. That's what Rajesh meant.
Yeah, my favorite use case was connected cow because we are the largest milk producer
well said.
500 billion bovines. So yeah,
wonderful use case. Yes.
I want to add one more is the transportation, the transportation which is with the IoTs, all the tracking of the transports across happening, which has already started out with the IoT devices, and the centralized hubs are monitoring it. So that's another one use case which I look out from with the 5G connect.
And Mudit, you talked about agriculture also, which at the start, which is also huge contributor to GDP, right? So,
I would like to say that, Mudit, let's get in touch with each other because I'm in touch with the Minister of State, and this agriculture case is something that we are very keen to do. So we can get this thing rolled out as a pilot.
Awesome.
Wonderful. Awesome.
Great, everyone. Thank you very much. This was really good. I think we should continue this discussion maybe for longer, offline later. but brilliant. Thank you very much. Take care. Stay safe.
Take care. Thanks, Neil, and thanks everyone. Wonderful session.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all.
So, thank you, Neil. It was a very interesting session. And with this, we are going to end this session and we'll have a 15-minute break so that we can start our next session. And speaker of this session can stay online to hear the other speaker for the next session.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Neil, can you hear me?
Neil is not on the stage.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Kesav, I think you have to leave the stage because you are part of panel discussion. Mr. Kesav Raju, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah. Let me log
I
off.
think you have to, yeah, please. Perfect. So, Anil, are you around?
No, we can't see him on stage.
Yeah. Let me call him. नील आप लॉगिन कर दो ना एक बार.
So they have configured it only for 6 speakers, and therefore this is the situation that's happening.
It's possible.
Okay, so I think this screen can adjust only 8 speaker. I will start the session asking Abhay sir to start his presentation and then I will leave the stage. Okay. Abhay sir, you can start your presentation now.
Okay. So are we live?
Yeah, we are live.
So good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are able to see my screen and you are also able to hear me very clearly. Can somebody acknowledge it, please?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, great. So the whole Congress is about SDN and NFV. What I thought today was to discuss not the what part of it. We all know what is SDN and what is NFV. I thought let me share with you some interesting facts on in terms of how the business case looks like for both of them. And when I say how, what are the steps particularly you take when you are moving on the NFV front? So that's how I titled it. I'll keep it very short and run it fast because it's more like a panel discussion. So what we'll talk about is SDN and virtualization. So the business benefits of SD-WAN, that is the why SD-WAN. And if you look at the business case drivers, that's more from an orchestration of the SD-WAN scenario. That's one of the major advantages of the first starting points when we started off with SDN. So work from home has resulted into a very big uptake as far as SDN is concerned. I mean, the SD-WAN connectivity, the way rest of the operators around the world are using it, it has resulted into big advantage to them. The moment you are able to orchestrate it in a proper fashion, it has resulted in that much more benefits. And I will quickly share one of the use cases NTT Docomo did with their SD-WAN connectivity. They are one of the front runners in terms of exploiting it in the best possible fashion. And when they put orchestration on top of it, they were able to generate serious amount of savings, as you can say in the business case that has been shown. And quickly running over to the virtualization part of it. Now, everybody started off their virtualization journey. Every telco operator started their virtualization journey somehow in a pseudo virtualized stack fashion. What do I mean by pseudo virtualization is like we had an EPC which was virtualized, but it was vertically integrated. We have an IMS which is virtualized, but it was vertically integrated. So one of the good examples as we see is on virtualization, who uses is best. Amazon, they do billion-dollar sales, which happened just last week or last to last week. They do 200 times the traffic that they do normally in their normal course of action. How do they get that kind of capacity all of a sudden? How do they scale out all of a sudden? It simply boils down to the fact that they leverage AWS, which is of course their sister concern, but the best part of it is the technology underlying. And this is what was displayed by Rakuten. If you look at what they did when they deployed their platform is to create first a telco cloud platform, and on top of it they are running close to about 55-70 odd network functions, all of them virtualized, but all of them, the scaling in and scaling out becomes so much more easy depending on what is going on, what needs more capacity and what needs less. Very simply put, mathematically, if we are running 5 VNFs and each running at 75% capacity, actually we'll end up, when we are vertically virtualized, we'll end up wasting 125% of the capacity, which otherwise would become applicable for rest of the application to do scale in and scale out. So that's the fundamental principle of why the platform level or telco cloud platform created virtualization can bring in the benefits. How do we go about doing it? Very simply, these are some of the basic aspects. Identify all the parameters that you want to take it on to the virtualization, create a proper design as far as how your pods are going to look like, identify which one of them are going to be control functions, control plane led, and which of them are control plane and user plane led. Depending on that, you can plan it out to have it in a centralized data center or in a distributed data center. Why it is important in order to get it distributed is, of course, go forward, distributed is the key in terms of taking it forward. So plan your centralized telco cloud and then plan for your distributed data centers the way you want to take it forward. One of the business cases that I want to show here is of a Latin American operator. They simply first took it onto their centralized data center, and then gradually they take it they migrated their payloads onto their edge data centers, and the savings, as you can see, was close to about $45 million in a 5-year TCO model, and they were able to fetch in new revenues of $43 million because they were nearer to the customers, and that was the advantage of implementing it in this fashion. Coming to the step 3 of virtualization is to take the containerized virtualized systems over bare metal. How does it bring in the advantage? Of course, we all theoretically know that it has fewer layers, higher efficiency, higher performance, but let's see it practically in terms of numbers as to how does it look like. There's one of the cases that I want to showcase it to you. This is Nokia. When you take it from the virtualized platform onto a containerized bare metal, containers over bare metal kind of a platform, this is the kind of vCPU savings that you get on each one of them. Signaling brings in 33%, media brings in 84%, and CFX brings in 25% saving, which basically brings down the number of servers or the number of server racks from 34 to 4. That's a serious advantage. Power consumption goes down big time, and hardware cost savings come up as a big time. So that's the step 3. So what you did is you planned for your centralized data center for virtualization. Step 2, you distributed it. Step 3, you took from the virtualization platform to containers over bare metal, and then comes the step 4, which is taking all of it on a centrally managed hybrid cloud management platform. That's something that what we call it as the Common Software Foundation platform. Now this platform enables this brings in the capability to manage any type of a cloud environment, be it OpenStack, be it VMware, be it bare metal, anything and everything that you want to manage, you are able to do that. So that was a short introduction that I thought I wanted to give about both the aspects of the things that we are wanting to discuss here, and I'm sure this will bring in some kind of directional. I know the panelists here are very eminent. I know a few of them personally very well, and I know they have vast wealth of experience in terms of they have done it practically on ground, particularly people like Tyag, who is on the call. They have implemented in NGO, and they will share their experiences of how they are migrating, they are moving forward in this journey. Thank you. Over to you, Anjani.
So I think we need to get Anjani to the stage.
Yeah.
He's back.
Anjani, you want me to drop off so that you can bring others on stage?
Yes, sir. I think there is some technical issue. I'm just working with the technical team.
No, doesn't matter. Let me drop off so that you can accommodate rest of the people on the screen. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
So now I will, I think Neil has to moderate the session, but before he moderate, I would request Mr. Alok Tashniyal to give his presentation now.
Sure.
Mr. Alok, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Anjani.
Yeah.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes. Awesome. So, good afternoon, guys. It's actually very early morning for me. Good afternoon from Atlanta, Georgia. Actually, I listened in to the moderation that Neil had just conducted right before this. It was a pretty good session talking about virtualization. So let's talk a little more about virtualization and where that goes. If I look at India, focusing on India or India's roadmap, we're seeing by 2023 we are looking at about 500 million internet users or cell phone users, and almost 3 to 4 billion of IoT devices. That basically means a lot of data consumption. Sorry, did I repeat? I'm hearing my own. Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I hear a ghost kind of a voice.
Go.
Let me try again. Yeah, I guess it's better. Nope. Okay, let's try again. Okay, so no, I still hear my echo, or maybe not.
For us, it's okay. Alok, continue, please.
Okay, so again, I guess we don't need to emphasize more, but given the amount of data volumes that we're looking at, throwing hardware at that to manage that kind of volume is not an answer, right? As I'm sure Tyag will talk about this. Mudit mentioned this right before in the panel. Before this one, so that basically every service provider agrees that even though the data consumption is going through the roof, the money that's coming in or what consumers are willing to pay for is not, right? That is still staying where it was. Or they're actually looking for cheaper bandwidth. And as a result, the solution to that is to move towards more optimization, and that's basically what was the birth of virtualization. Right, so virtualization came in that, guys, we cannot throw more boxes at it. We need to figure out how to optimize resources, share resources, can't run at 30%, 40%, 50% capacity, cannot work at plan for the max and then work at average. So virtualization started with 4G, I would say. Did not go that well. People had been trying to put 4G in there, but with 5G, one of this biggest charm is that virtualization will truly kick in. In fact, most of the 5G solutions come in a virtual fashion, right? So you either have them as VNFs or you have them as containers. The idea being is when you deploy 5G, you deploy it in a virtual fashion, and that would help you to provide the customers what they need, i.e., more bandwidth, and hopefully lower cost. Now, the biggest value that was supposed to come out of 5G was through enterprise use cases. Consumers are not looking at paying more, right? Consumers still want to pay less, if possible, than what they were paying for 4G or what they were paying for 3G. So the business case for 5G, and Neil actually asked this question, that what is the ROI, what is the business case in the previous session? And the business case for 5G was supposed to come out of the enterprise world, right? The enterprises needed that kind of capabilities. They needed that kind of speeds, that kind of latency, and would have been willing to pay. As luck would have it, we had COVID strike us earlier this year. And with COVID, most of the enterprises overnight had all their employees start working from home. So as people started working from home, things completely changed. A lot of the enterprise use cases actually went to standstill, and a different kind of, or different sets of use cases came into play. And there was a pivot that had to happen, that is still happening in this new world, in this new way that we are working. To partner with 5G, talking about the new way or the new kinds of use cases that came in, around the time when people were looking at 5G, there was another phenomenon that had come in the wireline world called SD-WAN, which was, guys, we need to move out of VPN, and given that more and more applications that you consume, more and more applications that you use, are in the cloud and not necessarily at the enterprise space, it doesn't make sense to go MPLS and to go VPN into your enterprise. Instead, you should actually be able to go directly to the cloud. And that's where SD-WAN started playing in. Again, COVID hit, and the challenge was with SD-WAN, you would still have to have a box that you would deploy at a branch office. You can't afford to have that box deploying at everybody's house. That gave to a new kind of a use case, and this it's called SASE, Secure Access Service Edge, which was a combination of security and SD-WAN capabilities coming together, but coming at the edge. It became a beautiful 5G use case, a 5G use case for consumers, where service providers started seeing, okay, this is an opportunity where you can actually generate some additional revenue. So there are lots of use cases like these that have come up, some because of COVID, some because of the new way of working, some because 5G speeds are now equivalent to, if not better, to wireline speeds, right? You start bringing them together, and we see use cases, whether they're SASE use cases or industrial IoT use cases or any use case that requires video, whether it's facial recognition, whether it's AI, and so on. These use cases are giving hope that yes, you can still monetize the revenue and generate revenue out of 5G. So again, for any technology for you to adopt the technology, you have to have one of two: either generate additional revenue or reduce cost. The promise for 5G was it'll generate additional revenue and reduce cost. Reduce cost because of virtualization, and generate revenue because of these new use cases. Looking at reduction of costs, there are two ways. Again, when it comes to the adoption of virtualization, there are two ways that service providers could actually adopt virtualization. One is similar to what Mudit mentioned in the previous session, which was go horizontal. Create your cloud environment, create your cloud infrastructure, and deploy all network functions on that so that you can actually share resources, all right, between the various functions. The challenge here is that if you are procuring applications from different vendors, all of those vendors need to have their functions working on the same or similar platforms, and that was easier said than done. Even today, it's easier said than done. It's very, very, very difficult, as service providers are seeing, to try and get the various vendors to agree on where they'll deploy, how they'll deploy, what version they would deploy on, and getting them all to work on a horizontal environment is very challenging, becomes a not very cost-effective method for service providers to work on. However, that is the direction to go. That would be the right direction to go. People like Rakuten have proved it. Jio actually decided to go and build their own to ensure that they can go into a horizontal cloud. Verizon's looking at it. AT&T is trying to put everything onto a horizontal. So again, there are a lot of examples of service providers trying to bring it, because that's where you see the value from virtualization. That's where you see the promise of virtualization coming in, because you can truly share resources. However, when I look at most of the service providers globally, most of them have adopted what we call the vertical clouds. The vertical integrated cloud is the easier step to move from an appliance-based or a box-based, hardware-based solution to a virtual solution, where you basically ask the vendor, just replace your box with a fully integrated end-to-end stack. At least I'll be able to put in, say that yes, I've virtualized, and then I can slowly start looking at how do I move to a horizontal world. The problem with the vertical cloud is, yes, you passed on the challenge to the vendor. The vendor has to ensure that their stack works end-to-end, but now you have n number of stacks that you have to deal with, right? Whether it's 3, depending on how many vendors you have, that many stacks you have to deal with and have to work with. So the promise of saving that virtualization was supposed to bring to you, the ROI basically just disappears the moment you move to a vertical space. So the question comes down to is, can vertical be a stepping stone to you truly getting to your horizontal integrated cloud? Maybe, probably. But you will finally get your savings that virtualization promised only if you are able to successfully move to an horizontal world. Again, if that was not enough, irrespective of whether you go horizontal or you go vertical, you have multiple ways of going virtual. You can go OpenStack and define your VNFs and VMs, or the new way of doing it, which is go Kubernetes and go through cloud, or work with VMware that will give you both Kubernetes and OpenStack, depending on which direction you want to go. So even within Kubernetes, within OpenStack, you have multiple choices, multiple options of which direction you go. So if you're going vertical telco, it basically means, again, that many different options and that many different clouds that you have to manage. If you're going horizontal, you basically choose which one you want, and then you have to work with all the vendors to ensure that they can support that as well. So either way, neither one of them is an easy answer. Question is where you can actually save more, or more important is, from an operational perspective, how do you go in and meet the customer experience? Because ultimately it's about customer experience. Ultimately it's about, can you provide the services that you wanted to your customers, and what is your easiest, best, and most cost-effective route to get there. To be able to provide that, now that given that whether you go vertical or you go horizontal, whether you go full Kubernetes, full OpenStack, or you go a multitude of them, and whether you go in and just simply provide them with traditional telco services, or you embrace capabilities like SASE, like industrial IoT, you now have a plethora of environments and infrastructure that you need to manage. And for you to be able to manage that, it's very important that, number one, you orchestrate it right, you automate it right, and then you assure it right. And the assurance starts all the way from when you design it at the lab to right before deploying it, where you ensure that it is ready, and then you ultimately deploy it. And it has to go in a fashion where you are actually testing it end to end. So it's not about application testing, it's not about infrastructure testing, it's not about integration testing. It's, can I put it on my CI/CD chain and look at it in a fashion where I start from the infrastructure, ensure that depending on how many pieces of infrastructure I have, test the infrastructure, benchmark it, look at the infrastructure manager, whether it's Kubernetes, whether it's OpenStack, whether it's VMware, whatever the options are, ensure that they are actually working. Look at the lifecycle of your network functions, ensure that you can actually manage the lifecycle, automate the lifecycle, and then test the applications themselves. If you go for a full lifecycle, for a full end-to-end solution set, and go through and look through the entire lifecycle, by the time you go in for deployment and you're ready for deployment, you have checked all the boxes, ensure that you've done your due diligence, and ensure that you are actually getting ready to move stuff into the live world and into the cloud environment with minimal risks. Now, again, given the agility that the network now demands, given that you need to deploy on the edge or in the core or across both of them, and being able to have the requirement of scaling it on demand, being able to share resources and so on, it means that the traditional way of testing and assuring is not going to work. You can't have, guys, let's test it in the lab, let's then look at and see if we can stage it, and then we deploy it. You actually would need to either go a blue-green approach or a canary approach, which allows you to move from the lab to the readiness to actual deployment, where you do fault remediation and come back, right? All across in a true CI/CD chain, right? And that basically allows you and ensures that you are ready to attack the challenges, irrespective of whether you have one environment, two environments, multiple environments. You're moving from a vertical to a horizontal world, or you're moving from an OpenStack to a Kubernetes world, or you want to keep a hybrid environment and still be able to perform and provide the services that your customers are looking for. So in summary, I would say putting in the right infrastructure, putting in the right thought process on when you're designing them, bringing them together allows you to accelerate, accelerate your time to market, generate the revenue that you're looking for, reduce the time that you would spend in troubleshooting, trying to monitor and figuring out where the challenges are. And of course, optimizing your overall deployment strategy. So it starts all the way from the infrastructure and then goes to the application. A lot of times the application is what people are looking at, and when they finally go into for deployment, they realize that the integration between the various stacks haven't worked out. Right, and then you end up doing troubleshooting on your live network, trying to make it work, and that's what's been plaguing the virtualization industry over the last few years. So this is where we help. This is again the direction that would help customers move from, or help CSPs move from deploying their infrastructure, creating their cloud, again, whether it's vertical or horizontal, whether it's OpenStack or Kubernetes or it's VMware, bringing them together, putting your applications, having them share, and then truly generating your ROI out of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alok.
Hello?
Yeah. Do you want me to hop off so that you can come back in? Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So, thank you, Mr. Alok. Now you have to leave the stage so that Keshav can join in.
Yep. I will do that.
Thanks, Alok. Thank you very much. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'll just invite Keshav on board. Okay, so Neil, you can continue with your panel discussion. I think there is some technical issue. I'll talk to Keshav and he will join the stage later. Yeah,
great,
so
great. Yeah. Thank you, and thank you, Anjani.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the second session. I hope everyone have ample of water, coffee, and everything to carry on. So today we have a great panel again, discussing more about the new disaggregated cloud, NFV, SDN, and all the 9 yards. So let me start by introducing in the order of the windows. So we have with us Mr. Rajesh Valiat. He is Senior Director R&D ADVA. And hello Rajesh, welcome to the panel.
Hi, it's my pleasure. Hey, Neil.
And we have Mr. Uwe Pressig from HPE. Hello.
Hello, everybody. Great to be here. Thanks.
Great. And then we have Mr. Tyagarajan, Senior VP and Head, Converged Service Core at Reliance Jio, building all the core network stuff at Jio. Hello, Tyagarajan. You're on mute.
Sorry. Hello, everyone. Hello, Nilesh. Good to be here.
Thank you. And then we have Mr. Rajneesh Garg. He is VP Vodafone Idea and handles SDN and IP transport. correct? Mr. Rajesh, welcome.
Yeah. Hi, Neil.
Thank
Good
you.
afternoon.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Next, we have Mr. Hemant Kumar Jha. He is Network and Planning Engineering at Reliance Jio, Mr. Tyagarajan's colleague, if I'm not wrong. So, welcome, Hemant, to the panel.
Yeah, hi, everyone.
And then we have Mr. Keshav Raju, who is Head of Solutions NFV and Cloud Assurance at Spirent. Mr. Alok's colleague, who just gave us a very great presentation on the telco cloud. So, good afternoon. So let's jump in with the discussion. We have almost close to 30 minutes. I know it is just time to get warmed up, but let's see how far we can go. Tell us more about Rajesh. What is your role at ADVA, and what is your view on the disaggregated networks and the journey what telcos are going through right now in India?
Yeah, so I lead the NFV in ADVA for the last few years, and I'm totally convinced on the fact that disaggregation is a way to go. Be it disaggregating from software to hardware, or disaggregating the big monolithic components to smaller components, which can then be handled better from a resource utilization point of view. So I think that's going to be the future. Now, there is a lot of technologies that allows, and there is a lot of attempts being made, because I've been kind of going through this journey for the last few years, and I've seen that it's easier said than done, right? We are one of the vendors who is trying to make the NFV real, and we have been successful in it. But at the same time, the catch is the operationalizing aspects of the whole disaggregation and the deployment aspects. So it needs we have seen that telcos, maybe I would like to hear from some of the telco representatives here, but in our view, it needs a lot of planning on the telco side, because it's totally different, so it's a transformational thing. So it needs some kind of a CXO level initiative coming all the way down, because you have technical challenges, you have non-technical challenges in terms of breaking the barriers within the organization, which was traditionally handling like L2s, L3s, and very, very, very hard-walled departments. And now, so those were some of the initial challenges. But now what I'm seeing is it has been evolved quite well. And SD-WAN was one of the primary catalysts. Initially the first wave of SD-WAN was through bare metal, but now it has been moved. That has been used as one of the catalysts to move to more into a cloud-centric deployment on a bare metal. So when I say cloud, I'm talking more about the edge clouds that are building up. So I think disaggregation is the way to go, because not one vendor can. The technology is becoming so complex that you cannot basically rely on just one vendor.
They are doing blasting, correct?
Neil, we can't hear you.
Sorry, I was on mute. Mr. Tyagarajan, do you want to jump in and add on to what Rajesh said about disaggregation, and how do you see evolving, the network landscape evolving from operator points of view, from NFV point of view to start with? Mr. Tyagarajan? We can't hear you.
Tyagarajan sir, can you hear?
Maybe.
Can you hear?
Or maybe then we can move on to his colleague, Mr. Hemant Jha. Do you want to jump in and talk about SDN side of things.
So, Neil, first of all, I would request all the speakers to kindly turn on their video so that audience can see.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Neil. On the NFV and the cloud, we have a pretty good talk with our esteemed colleagues. In terms of SDN, we really look forward. The SDN is going to be a mainstream technology while going for the 5G or the future kind of network evolution and adoption. In terms of SDN adoption in telco environment, it started almost 5 to 6 years back when vendor came up with their strategy and coming up with few SDN solutions in terms of for the transport based or for the overall network. But even at this moment of time, when the 3GPP is defining the 5G structure, they are more likely to increase the importance of the SDN in terms of the more functionality requirement as a basic imperative, like for example the network slicing. To implement network slicing, which really takes care the efficient resource utilization and the security and the isolation and the mobility management for many different use cases. So in that aspect, that becomes really inherent the SDN evolution for the telco environment. Now we talk about really in the perspective of transport. What the key tenant which we really looking forward is like the automation, which really driving the full automation operations and then simplifying the network operation and achieving the efficiency in the operation aspects. So a lot of functions will get automated and through with this SDN implementation, and then also the virtualization. So in transport, I would say the virtualization aspect would be a little bit very limited in terms of the far-flung enterprise segment, where we look forward to have the plug and play devices just we deploy it and then remotely configure it with the help of virtualization benefits, like we do it in the enterprise market with the other costs hardware applied. And then also we look forward to have the synergy between different domains, different networks, different layers and technologies, like for example the IP and optics transport can both blend together and have a synergetic journey together, achieving the more close efficiency for the resource as well as the service and all kinds of benefits together. And then also we also looking ahead from SDN is the flexibility in terms of the how the different characteristics of the optical resources can be tuned and can be adapted with respect to the application requirement. Or in the network requirement. And then also in the last, I would say the openness. The openness is also a very key tenet of this SDN and NFV journey. It all depends on how really effectively we adopt the open source software and the open hardware platform to accelerate this journey. And then ultimately the carrier grade SDN perspective. And then also, how do we really make the compatibility from the previous network functions with the CNF? And then going forward, it's also again on a cloud perspective. If you look at, it's also the adoption of what is the real strategy? Is it the function-based strategy or is it a platform-based strategy? Rightly mentioned earlier by our colleague is that the Kubernetes is going to be a future dominant, preference in terms of cloud environment. Of course. There is no doubt in that, because having multiple environment from the OpenStack or Kubernetes is not going to be sustainable in terms of having each single pane of glass observability and a smooth integration perspective. And also on the workload perspective, we really do not want any workload to have the lower performance. So in that, rightly it is mentioned, and also ultimately two, three points are very key in this here. Is the strategy of open source platform, open hardware, software, and the visibility, the monitoring. Because in the cloud environment, lots of time it happens that your visibility into the workload is getting hidden into the VMs, and that you need that observability close to the workloads, so you can monitor them, you can observe them. That's how we really look at that.
Great. Very good points, Hemant. Rajneesh, you also share similar role with Hemant at Vodafone. So can you talk about, to add to Hemant's perspective on SDN, right?
Yeah. Neil, so basically, as we see that this SDN and NFV, these are the two big components when we talk of this virtualization. So what I see is that SDN is going to play, it's already playing a major big role in transport, but there is much more to come in future. So primarily NFV is primarily important in the core networks or so, but if you talk of transport networks, then SDN
Yeah.
is going to play a major role in the networks. So like the bandwidth on demand provisioning, then the virtual private networks. So
Mm.
SDN is going to play a major role in the sense that it is going to give the operators benefit in terms of capex saving as well by doing the synergy between IP and optical networks. What happens normally that the people give the bandwidth provisioning separately on optical networks and separately on the IP, and then there is no much synergy happening. So there is a lot of bandwidth duplication happening in the networks. So this is one of the big benefit which SDN is going to drive in terms of capex savings. And similarly, in terms of OPEX, when there is a saving in terms of capex, it's going to have a lot of saving in terms of space and power. Then the provisioning speeds will also increase up. So it is going to help the NOC operation teams also in a big way. So that is the big advantage which SDN is going to deliver. So I would say that the scope for the SDN is still a lot far away. It's still able to deliver only 30-40% of whatever the expectations like we have been built up. So I think looking forward to more and more deployments and more use cases
Mm-hmm.
which will be really applicable for the operators network, because operators are carrying a lot of legacy networks also. So
Correct.
that also need to be looked into. So this is my
Correct.
views.
Correct. No, very precise. Thank you very much. Uwe, what is your view from ecosystem perspective on the disaggregation and where HPE is playing the role, right, in helping telcos achieve these synergies?
Yeah, as my four speakers have said, I mean, with the objective of introducing 5G and everything is going to be cloud native, I mean, there's not an option, disaggregation. The disaggregation is going to happen. And I really much liked the contribution from Alok on how he explained what then the challenges are if you go for the different options you have in how you manage the different virtual environments. And it's very important that we remember that we are going for this disaggregation, not for the sake of the disaggregation. There's another notion behind that, and that is being more flexible for our end customers, right? So we're doing all this cloud native stuff because we have to serve the customers better and faster. And that is only possible if we have a kind of aligned core, which can then integrate also seamlessly northbound with everything which we are getting from the CRM, so that we can give the customer a better experience. I always like to call that we're doing this because we need to give to our customers, if they want to order telco services or network services, kind of iTunes feelings. And in order to get there, so the iTunes store, you click there, you can get the application, and you want to have that. And that's what the enterprises really need. I mean, as you know, we are not a mere telco company. I mean, the biggest part of my company is working with manufacturing, with banking, and all the other industries. And that's what we hear from the CIOs over there. And we have to carefully listen to those guys, because those guys are the ones who, at the end of the day, are supposed to pay the bill for the 5G investments, right? So these are the people who will consume the 5G services at the end of the day. Also, Nokia said, I mean, it's not for the private market. The private market, you cannot achieve a much higher ARPU as you have today. So you have to go for the enterprise, and the enterprise have needs. And they are spoiled because they have very good experience from one or the other hyperscaler. And therefore, it's very important to go for the disaggregation and manage it properly.
Correct. Very well put. I think enterprise is the next wave of revenues for operators, and they are already well warmed up with hyperscalers. Correct. So telco has to make sure, telcos have to make sure that the services they're offering are better than hyperscalers, and they have the underlying infrastructure which is supporting that level of QoS. So, yep, very good. Tyagarajan, do you want to jump in and talk about the core part of NFV?
Yeah, Nilesh. Let me start like this. See, I know this transformation of NFV SDN this is not new to industry. I think it has been talked for a long time. We know that what is the benefit we will get. The industry for a long time talking, right? But if you look at that at the operator side,
yeah, sure. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, correct. Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
how do we solve this problem? Because end of the end customer don't mind whether you do a end-to-end virtualized and end-to-end cloud native work, but we are looking for customer to you look for better experience or cost-effective kind of model.
Correct.
Now, so see where are we this three journeys? How there is many places the virtualization is done, and we also done many things, and there is with a lot of promises which is done. So, but are we these all the promises are completely fulfilled with the entire technology, entire ecosystem? Yeah, I would say that 50% fulfilled, 50% not fulfilled.
Okay.
So, because not much impact is provided by the in the initial stage of virtualization, which you segregated the hardware with the software, and still today you deploy the softwares and you deploy a cloud ready architecture. Still, you have you don't know hardware agnostics. There are hardware dependencies.
Okay.
You completely go back to the scenario of still you need to go back and do the old school of looking at putting pieces together. This is one piece of puzzle. The second piece of puzzle, now this entire thing is of the entire promise of whether you will do agile, dynamic, and we'll have full and fully multi-vendor services, multi-vendor scenarios. So all these things definitely will as increasing a complexity. I mean, obviously this complexity increase a new service is going to come. The complexity can be managed with a well automated orchestration mechanism.
Exactly.
This is also very well understood by each and every operator. So these threefold approaches, taking the entire infrastructure, go from normal virtualization to the web scale based cloud native architecture, which is what the industries keep on promising. Because today that's the success story everybody knows it. Yeah, since I have the cloud, I am in the core side, I very well know that how the web scale architecture is working, where the telco architecture is working. So the web scale architecture is not a new. It has been there in the industry in this domain for more than a decade. But the telco, when you want to adopt that, there will be a huge amount of challenges. challenges in terms of technology, challenges in terms of mindset, challenges in terms of ecosystem development, everything come into picture.
Correct.
So this journey is mandatory, journey is required, journey is unavoidable. With the 5G, all this comes, but the journey only can successful with whole ecosystems works together.
Correct.
So only operator alone cannot take the journey forward, because there is a lot of trust, lot of drive from the operator side, because it's required a huge amount of shift in the entire transformation in the domain, from technology thinking shift, from the people shift, and the way you're going to operate, way you're going to do business. There is going to be a lot of changes completely. So entire changes need to be done. So these changes are feasible, possible, provided we could see a whole ecosystem develops fully, and that's where we will see the complete success for the this entire disaggregation and cloud native way of path forward.
Correct. Great points, Tyagarajan. I think to summarize your point, we are there in the journey, but still there are a lot of challenges from orchestration, automation point of view, and more so interoperability point of view, right? With different vendors, openness needs to be there more. So everything is more like plug and play and works together seamlessly. So that brings to a question: what about challenges you face apart from orchestration, automation? Is it standardization? Is standardization an issue as well?
So, Neil, I think there is multiple dimension of the challenges which we generally have. Of course, standardization, the telco generally works on the based on standards. If you see that there is no specific standard or in the cloud native and cloud ready framework, there are multiple standard bodies. You can say a lot of standard bodies are there now, huge number of standard bodies. Now, operators are confused. So what standard to follow? Which is going to be future proof for me?
Correct.
Right? So, because these are definitely the end of the it's economics. So, if we take a single path, can we going to succeed? Can we not going to succeed? By that time you take a path, I think there is other different modified mechanism come into picture. So, this one aspect of the standardization, or it narrow down the some options. So, leaving to that, this is what the future-proof mechanism to move forward. But I think if you look at the web scale mechanism, I think web scales are very well have worked on these areas. So, in fact, they have gone to with a very, very openness of the open hardware and open source softwares, and everything is open. And more importantly, they build a skill set to manage the end users within in-house. It is the dependency on the external parties to manage their infrastructure. It's very, very minimal. That's the success story of web scale, along with these 100% automations. So now, if we, in order to be successful in this area, obviously these building up in-house skill set and the multi vendors and multi vendor and multi tendency, those kind of aspects, these all need to be addressed actually.
Correct. Very, very good points. So Keshav, what is your view on when you look at from Spirent's perspective, right? What are the challenges you see when you have these all test cases for different operators, right? Where you see the most bottlenecks are?
Yeah. Let me share my experience when we work with our customers. They have faced a lot of challenges in the outages in their production network.
Uptime.
Why did that happen? Because they have designed the NFV or the SDN, and it is implemented by a system integrator or some vendor. But again, on top of it, they have multi-vendor VNF applications which is installed. But they have faced performance bottleneck, outages in their NFV. But why did that happen? It's because they have designed and they're expecting a specific SLA or a specific KPI, but that's not been tested before it went live. Of course, any system integrator, they know how to implement the cloud. They know how to implement the applications. They know how to integrate, of course, but they have not tested it. Some features do not work. In the interoperability, out of 10 features, 8 features will work, and the other 2 features are not working.
Correct.
So they did not follow the testing standard or their own methodologies to test it before it is deployed and before the service is handed over to the end user. They have not tested it, so they have failed. It's like that. I mean, it's of course the ecosystem is multi-vendor, multi-layer again.
Yeah.
So there's layer 1. I mean, if you see SDN, they have layer 1, they have layer 2, like optical networking is also managed by the SDN.
Correct.
And there's an IP layer on top of it, and again SDN is managing that. So the multi-layer, multi-vendor on top of it again. So they have to test it before they put it into production. Otherwise they will have a lot of performance bottleneck.
Correct.
Otherwise they will have outages or they will have interoperability issues. The same goes to the virtualization as well, in the NFV as well. We have seen customers who have approached us because they have deployed applications that's VNFs basically on the NFV infrastructure, and they have high-end servers, and they still say that I'm not getting the expected throughput out of it. They say that they have SRIOV NIC cards and the smart NIC cards, but I'm still not getting the throughput out of it. Yeah, the data sheet of the SRIOV NIC card or the smart NIC cards, for example. So they have a clear definition, what could be achieved out of it. It's a definition, but have they tested, before they put it into production? It's no more traditional physical network box, which is already tested by the vendor. They guarantee the throughput. They guarantee the performance of that hardware box, and they give it to you, and we put it into the data center and plug into the network, and it works. That's the physical world, but in the NFV world, the environment is different. It's the virtual applications getting deployed on the shared infrastructure. So the goal is, we have to know what is the limitation of the shared infra.
Correct.
I'm confident, after that, I will go deploy my applications. It will work. So there are many challenges to talk, and again, the life cycle management of the whole ecosystem is very important. Like if you, for example, if you take the orchestrators, the NFV orchestrators, they are expected to perform life cycle features like instantiating a service or scaling out a service, or if it finds a fault, how fast it is resolving the fault, rectifying the fault. So these are some of the things which customer they know it is the telco operators, they know it is very challenging. So they approach us in the multi-vendor environment, because the NFV orchestrator is a generic one, and they have multi-vendor applications and the network service running on top of it. So they want to test the lifecycle functionality of the NFV orchestrator itself. Is it really performing? Is it really executing the lifecycle operations? And they want to test that before they put it into the production network. Yeah.
Correct. Great. I think I was exactly wanted to hear something like this, because as I asked before about standardization, interoperability, there's a lot of issues around that, and which can hamper the real promise of SDN NFV, correct? And testing is very important part of it. So I think we have
one more point to add. One more point to add. Many tier 1 telco operators, and of course even here in India, Vodafone, Airtel, Reliance Jio, everybody has the testing lab, and I heard our panelists talking. They were saying automation should be there, orchestration should be there for implementing. Yes, that's right, but also the automation framework, the DevOps framework, should also concentrate not only the automatic installation or automatic discovery of faults, but it should also incorporate. It's not that difficult. It can be done. It should also incorporate to have automated testing before the deployed network goes live. It's very important to do that, and we have seen many tier 1 telco operators doing this. So they have their DevOps framework which creates workflows, the workflows to test the specific domain, for example NFVI, and then test the VNF applications for performance and for interoperability. And then once the workflow 1 is completed and the test results are good, and then workflow 2 gets triggered, and workflow 2 is to implement the or configure the NFVI or configure the VNF applications. So it's very important. I would like to say that it's very important to include testing also as part of the orchestration and the automation.
Correct.
Yeah, just quickly want to pick up the point from what Kesav is rightly highlighting here in terms of the testing for the integration and the interoperability. Lots of open platforms and open standard bodies are there which are really carrying out all these key definition of the reference architecture, reference modeling, and reference integration entire ecosystem, where the compliance or the adherence to the different heterogeneous cloud environment for a respective CNF or VNF can be carried out and observed and tested before it really deploys into the telco environment. So here again, the open bodies which are really carrying out all the standardization around the testing environment is also very critical. And also in this way, we can see the telco environment and the cloud environment is going to be very heterogeneous in terms of like the core architecture and the RAN and the architecture, where the RAN workloads are really very sensitive to the latency and the throughput. Whereas then in that case defining which one is the right approach going on, and like the creating a hybrid cloud is the right approach, or a homogeneous cloud infra is the right approach. There are a lot of ifs and buts around that.
Correct. And when you add in future network slicing to it and private networks, it makes it even more complex when it comes to SLAs, achieving SLAs for those enterprise networks, right?
Yeah,
so,
and also even on a journey point where my colleague Mr. Tyagarajan sir mentioned about the journey in the NFV cloud, the same journey is also being observed even in the SDN phase. But the time when it was started, SDN in the telco environment, somewhere around 7 to 8 years back, it was mainly the very basic functionality, very basic use case around the provisioning, configuration, and few automation cases. But now, as we moving into the second journey of SDN, where it is called the next generation SDN, we have the P4 language, abstracting the entire complexity of the infrastructure and the ASIC independent. We have like the stratum defined now by the bodies, and then so again SDN is also marching ahead with its new journey, where we call it a next gen XGN, which is targeting at a specific use cases. Correct. And these are all the phases.
Correct.
So just pick up what Hemant was saying. See, the other one of the main ideas is we do see that the availability of the network function workload, right? So tuned to work the specific cloud platform, be it cloud native or be it the virtualized network. I think that is also, see, we do see the one of Kesav was talking about the challenges we face by operator while integrating all kind of things.
Yeah.
So see, primary what we have also seen that obviously everything economics. So when we started our journey for virtual EPC, we do the entire cloud ready framework. We do see that the applications are, the workloads are not properly packaged to work as a cloud package.
Okay.
So it's completely overwrapped. You have a physical, you created the workload is the earlier workload, which work on the physical version of the workload, and run around the wrapper around that and just put it on the virtual machine or a virtual cloud. So the performance of the those workload with the physical workload, there's no difference we are seeing.
Right.
So that's the reason I'm saying that the promise of the entire framework, the virtualization, disaggregation, cloud ready, this promise of what we need doing, which is not only just to disaggregation of the software component of the cloud framework won't help.
Correct.
So there has to be ecosystem. There's a network, the workload which is going to be hosted on this. Those all required to be tuned. Those are required to be ported properly to be this cloud. I think then only I think the holistic performance, holistic outcome which will come. I think these are all challenges which I just want to add with what Hemant was saying today.
So just I mean, I think these are all great points. I mean, I think I can very well say that most of our customers are right now the tier 1 customers in the US. They are also kind of echoing the same kind of sentiments that I'm hearing from Reliance and Vodafone and the likes, right? And because it's actually there is a lot of promise and things are heading in the right direction, but it's been a long journey. But the things like it has to be, the workloads has to be compatible with CODS, which means the NFV platform needs to be, you should be able to operate on a CODS box from an economic point of view, and then openness. So there are no standards per se, but at least if you have openness, you have well-defined interfaces. Then like Keshav was saying, at least you can use that to test end-to-end, right? Both the data and the control. So these are all the same. And another thing I would like to point out from we talked about the core. There is edge. I think somebody was laying out the strategy that at least focus on maybe just core first and then slowly move out to the edge. But actually, I'm seeing a different thing, which is this is too big of a problem to just lift all together, because there are like decades of applications lying around. Different types of applications. And so what I'm seeing the trend is there is definitely a focus on the edge now, right? Because that one slice, that's maybe more manageable, and then we will walk the way through, walk the way up to the core, because core has a lot of applications that are sensitive, delay sensitive, latency sensitive. So what I'm seeing is people are kind of slicing it and say, let's solve the edge, and edge is becoming compelling for a variety of reasons now, because 5G is throwing in a lot of new opportunities, right? Which is from a commercial point of view. And then there are a lot of applications at the edge, which, like very data hungry applications, like the IoTs, right? And the augmented reality applications. The people are realizing you just cannot transport the data all the way to the central office. So it has to be processed at the edge, and there's this big OT happening, operational transformation. So all these are now making the edge cloud case on using NFV very compelling. And then the advantage of NFV, or the moving the cloud technologies to the edge, is also helping in this trade conflict, trade war conflicts and pandemic situations in which you don't really have supply chain disruptions if you're using CODS, and especially if it can work on Dell, Lanner, Supermicro, and the likes. And the same thing, if it can be managed centrally, the edge clouds can be managed centrally, then I think again you can avoid a truck roll. And so all these things, are kind of making the edge cloud use case in particular very compelling in my experience. And the SD-WAN and the SASE, components that goes at the edge, all these security plus, SD-WAN networking functionalities plus the edge applications, all can be migrated into the edge cloud that you're hosting, which is a very miniature version of what you see at the core. And that is what I'm seeing. People are kind of slicing and dividing and conquering the whole puzzle, because a lot of challenges are there, but people are chasing after these challenges, and it's a big pie, right? Then a lot of people has opportunities to solve different parts of the puzzle. So, so I just want to throw out that it's not just challenges; things are evolving, especially when you look at different segments, especially on the edge. Things are. I'm definitely seeing kind of a hockey stick kind of deployment curve happening at the edge. Specifically, moving SD-WAN refresh happening, and the network services refresh happening, and it's all moving to edge cloud, which is primarily on a UCPE or an edge cloud device, which can also take in a lot of customer workloads and IT workloads, which were primarily running outside of the bare metal. So from an operator point of view, I see a lot of opportunities by dividing and conquering the puzzle, and especially focusing on end cloud, where there seems to be a lot of opportunities.
Got it. Very good point, Rajesh. I think
I would like to add, one more point here. I wanted to share another experience in one of our project. Lifecycle management of the Mano orchestrator. And it was what happened was they triggered a manual scale out NS scale out from the orchestrator, from the NFVO. But it did not scale out. It means the scale out means creating more VMs on the infrastructure. It did not scale out.
Yeah.
And customer and also the other architects there, they were blaming it is the orchestrator who did not scale out. And we were actually testing the lifecycle management there, lifecycle management of the orchestrator, and then we found out it's not the NFVO who is to be blamed there. NFVO sent the command to the Vim orchestrator to create those VMs, and the Vim also received that command from the NFVO, and he sent a message to the NFVI to create the VMs. He also did that, but the NFVI couldn't create the VMs because they were busy. The hypervisor got busy, and they were not able to create the VMs. And for 2 days, everybody were blaming the wrong component there. They were blaming it as the orchestrator who is creating the problem. Complexity is there, but with the right testing, that can be isolated. The problem can be quickly isolated and quickly fixed also, in my opinion.
Good point. Great. We are almost on top of the hour. So great discussion. I think we can go on discussing more and more. There are so many topics which comes to mind, which we could discuss, like how intelligent the SDN NFV could be in future with addition of AI algorithms and so forth, and becomes more and more automated. But yeah, means there's a topic for another day. So before we conclude the session, I can do some rapid fire like I did in last session, just to understand what is your wish list in terms of building all these new great technologies, implementing it, deploying it. But what is the end goal? What is the end top use case you envision is closer to your heart, right? When you see all this getting deployed really well. So maybe Rajesh, you can start. What is one key use case you think that will be driven really well and bring maybe a lot of benefits to the industry?
Yeah, I would like to, just like the cloud is pervasive now, I would like each and every device out there, which it needs to be each and every bare metal device out there needs to be replaced with a universal CPE which can run a cloud. It can be of various sizes and shapes, micro, mini, macro, doesn't matter, but it has to be an NFV based device.
Nice. So everything is virtualized.
Yes.
Yeah. Every node basically.
Yeah. Billions and billions of mini micro clouds.
Yeah, surrounded by the sea of nodes.
Yes.
Great. Nagrajan, what is your wish list of one use case which?
So, I would see that I think the anything on mission critical communications.
Okay.
Right. Be it a public safety, be it any control system of transportation. I think anything on the mission critical application. I think that's good. I could see because that's going to be very complex environment to manage.
Right.
So because the variety of dynamic change in workload, dynamic change in behavior of the traffic, and which definitely would require a huge amount of involvement of the automation and AI, ML, those kind of things.
Correct.
I think that's one killer application which will definitely going to help.
Great. Uwe, your wish list?
Yeah, I mean, on the wish list, I would also have the open interfaces because there's a lot of things coming up of super use cases for 5G, which are coming out of the industry. And I believe we are a little bit back to where we have been 3 years back, when two generations back, with the introduction of UMTS, where everybody was looking for the killer application. The killer application for 5G and the killer use case for sure is coming. It's coming out of the big enterprises. They have special needs in how to move away from automation, which they have today, because these people are automated today. They need to go for autonomous factories and similar things. And we can only achieve that if we have open interfaces so that we can interact on all levels. And that includes what has been said before, Paraj, that in the past we had the migration to the NFV. NFV had only a mediocre success because everybody thought we take things away from machines, we put them into virtual machines, and then everything is going to be easier. But remember, it's still machines. Now we're going to cloud native, and in cloud native, it's not machines anymore. So it's a radical change. You need to have open interfaces and build that ecosystem, which really enables new business services, which can connect to the 5G platform and can really exploit the benefits of a dynamic core as we wanted to introduce it with 5G.
Great thought. Open interfaces it is. Rajneesh, we can't hear you actually. Maybe Hemant, you can go next, and Rajneesh can follow.
Yeah. Am I audible now?
Oh, he's back. Rajneesh. Yeah. Please go ahead.
So I'm saying that yes, it is. See, the 5G in terms of enterprise application that's going to be the killer point in the future. But as you see the current networks, the major challenge what I foresee, and I would like to have a wish list in my top of the list is that to have to save on the capex point of view, because currently what is happening that we want to see that all these virtualization, this SDN and NFV, why let's say we have been hearing this last now I think more than a decade now, but we don't see this technology adoption by the operators in so massively. If you see all the other technologies, most of these technologies have been deployed very widely. But why, let's say, SDN NFV is less deployed compared to any other technology? If you see, whatever has been launched a couple of the years back. So the prime reason is that the operators are not able to build a direct business case from this. You see, the problem is that there has been no business case around this. That whatever the capex you want to deploy, the operator should be able to get the recovery out of that. If you want to deploy a new SDN controller, it should give you a benefit in terms of both capex and opex. So that is the most important point I would like to see, that to deploy these new technologies with a clear business case coming into picture.
Great. So business case and for capex needs to be solved, right? Capex issues. Great. Hemant?
Yeah, I agree with what Rajneesh is really mentioning about the preference for or the importance of the use case. In fact, at this moment, with 5G, what we see, the determination or the selection of a particular use case is really the key one before rolling out a network. Earlier, it used to be, the kind of let's network department can roll out the network, and then later on the commercial and the other decision maker can roll out their network and their services and customer bundling, many offerings. But at this moment with 5G, it's really key, important that first we decide the use case, the appropriate use case, as with the market statistics, the uses of the services, the patterns, demographic differences between the different areas where you want to launch these services. So deciding that one is very important, and then after that you factor your rolling out of your network and the technology, basically which one is the right technology to meet that use case. This is going to be the really key differentiator approach at this moment in 5G. And also the point which I look here as as a wish case, I look at as from the personal perspective, and then from the society perspective, and also from the industry perspective. So for any industry, the industry 4.0 is a key requirement, which everybody is looking at how this 5G can enable that. And for a society, like the IoT cases and other mission critical cases, always making a lot of preferences. And for a consumer, it's the the AR, VR, and all those really high gaming applications which can give the new experience, and that's going to be the key foundational requirement going forward in terms of that.
So you have a long wish list then.
Yeah. But ultimately it's the monetization, because monetization to any need is a real key one. So how to quickly recuperate that what we invest into.
Correct. Got it. Keshav, we can conclude with your wish list. I know your wish list, that every operator should use your Spirent test network solution. But what would be your ideal use case?
I'm talking with respect to my 16 years of experience on the field engineering. I have deployed cloud for the enterprise and also for the telco in my experience, and I have faced all these challenges. So of course I have two wish lists. One is during the design stage and the operation stage, there are different edge clouds which is evolving. There are different types of edge clouds. They call it micro, mini, again for different use cases. And also there is an edge cloud where industry, the open source industry, where they're talking that that edge cloud is only dedicated for AR, VR, and implementing only the acceleration cards and hardware in that.
Right.
And there's an edge cloud only for the user plane of subscriber calls. So categorize in different complexities within those edge clouds. So my recommendation would be, during the design stage and implementation stage, make sure that what you have designed, what you expect, you list down the KPIs, you list down the SLAs, and test that before you put it into the production. This is my wish list 1. And wish list 2 is post deployment, that is during the production network. It's very important that you collect the logs, monitors, telemetry, everything, and run the AI and analytics on top of it to find out where the problem is, who has caused the problem. Is it the infra layer? Is it the services layer? What has caused that problem? Why did it fail? And we have also seen in the industry that people talking about prediction based analysis. So these telemetry, these logs which you are collecting during the production network, that prediction based analysis can tell you what will happen in next 5 minutes if CPU cycles keeps increasing, if network throughput increases. So there's a trend analysis there. So there's a trending which is happening. So it will do an analysis on that, and it tells you what could happen in next 5 to 10 minutes. So if these two are implemented during implementation and the deployment stage that you're testing for your design, and in the operation stage, that you're running the analytics for the collected logs and reports. Logs and reports are very important in the operation stage. And also those analytics engine can trigger automatic recovery also. If there is a fault it sees, it can automatically recover. It can trigger for an automatic recovery. Or in next 10 minutes, there is a problem which could happen. It can scale out the services. I think with these two, telco operators will be successful in their journey and in their deployment. Yeah, this is all I would.
Great. So building a fail-safe, intelligent, analytics-driven network. Right. Cool. Super. Great. Thank you, guys. This was brilliant session. Very informative from core to RAN side of things, making it virtualized or software defined. Thank you very much, everyone. Stay safe and let's connect offline.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. Thank you very much.
Anjani, do you want to?
Yeah. So I have to especially thanks all the speaker and panelists who being there and share their thoughts on the current scenario of SDN NFV and the future and roadmap. What I have understood that there are many challenges which need to be addressed, and because of this COVID situation and this pandemic, we are having this seminar. But I personally feel that hopefully next year in 2021 we will meet physically and we will have this similar kind of discussion, so that during that time we will have some kind of solution there.
Yeah, thanks, Anjali.
Yeah, thanks, Anjali.
And take care of this.
Thank you, audience.
Bye.